Hi, at the corner of Trumbull and Asylum Streets in Hartford is the Hartford 21 building, built in 2006. It replaced part of the old Civic Center, now called the XL Center, that was on this corner. The Civic Center was opened in 1975, but before that there was an old Hartford landmark that stood on this corner for over a century, from 1857 to 1960. It was called the Allyn House. And for years, it was Hartford's most luxurious hotel. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of this fabulous lost building. Smith's Map of Hartford County, published in 1855, gives us an early view of the site. The map shows the entire county, but in the lower right-hand corner is an inset that shows where buildings were located at the time in downtown Hartford. So here's the northwest corner of Trumbull and Asylum. There was a house near the corner. According to a reminiscence by J.G. Rathbun, published in the Hartford Courant on October 13, 1899, the old house, quote, stood on the corner of Trumbull, quite a distance back from both streets, a sightly place surrounded by trees and shrubbery, including several catalpa trees bearing long, slender pods similar to vanilla leaves, which the boys used to gather, and after drying, smoked in imitation of cigars, unquote. The house was later bought by Timothy M. Allyn from Joseph S. Curtis. Timothy Allyn was the man who built the Allyn House Hotel just south of the homestead where he lived. Allyn was a prominent citizen and Republican politician in Hartford. He served as mayor of the city from 1858 to 1860, and it was in 1860 that Abraham Lincoln stayed with him when he visited the city, although Lincoln probably spent the night at the house rather than the hotel next door. This is a picture of the hotel from 1895. Plans for the building were drawn up by the architect Octavius Jordan in 1853, although construction didn't begin until 1856. As the Courant wrote on May 1st of that year, quote, "This building will be a credit to all concerned, it is hoped generations hence. Its erection by one man is a very public-spirited thing," unquote. The hotel opened in September of 1857. It had an Italianate-style facade of Portland brownstone and was designed as a quadrangle with an open courtyard at the center. There were towers at the center of each of its two main fronts facing Trumbull Street and Asylum Street. At street level were about 10 storefronts. The entrance on Trumbull Street was a private ladies' entrance. The main entrance was on the Asylum Street side. This is an earlier image of the hotel from a stereograph of the early 1860s, showing the Asylum Street entrance. As the Courant reported on November 13, 1857, quote, "The most striking feature on entering the halls of the hotel is the broad staircase, with a flight of stairs for the gentlemen on the one side and the ladies on the other, meeting at the various landings and parting as each story is approached. There will be some chance meetings on these landings that will send shocks of something as stirring as electricity through the human frame. The consequences will go down to posterity. The ladies and gents meet to part a few times, but finally meet to part no more," unquote. The dining room of the hotel ran the whole length of the west side and had a flight of stairs for ladies to slip out quietly unless they chose to, quote, "take the grand parade past the office and the gentlemen loungers in the corridor," unquote. Visitors could also head to the rooftop balustrade above each tower to admire the views. The Courant congratulated Mr. Allyn, stating, quote, "that our whole community owes him hearty thanks for his public-spirited effort to supply what we have long needed, a hotel in every respect of the first class," unquote. Just west of the hotel, and connected to it by a bridge on the second floor, is another building erected by Timothy Allyn. Opened in 1860, this was a large public hall called Allyn Hall. He certainly didn't mind naming buildings after himself. Like the hotel, it was also designed by Octavius Jordan in the Italianate style. In the 1860s, before Robert's Opera House opened in 1869, Allyn Hall was Hartford's leading playhouse. Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Horace Greeley, Henry Ward Beecher, Frederick Douglass, and others all gave lectures here. Later called the Auditorium Building, it sadly burned down in a fire in 1914. After Timothy Allyn's death in 1882, his successors would expand the hotel. They added an annex along Trumbull Street, which obscured the view of the old Allyn homestead from the street. The old house itself was eventually incorporated into the hotel as well. Here's a postcard view looking south at the west side of Trumbull Street. I've labeled the hotel annex and the neighboring building the Hartford County Courthouse at the corner of Trumbull and Allyn Street. Allyn Street doesn't extend all the way to Trumbull anymore because of the XL Center being in the way now. Returning to the entrance on the Asylum Street side, I want to talk about the big remodeling of the hotel that took place in 1898. The remodeling was by the architect Isaac A. Allyn, Jr. These before and after close-ups show how balconies were added to the outside of the building, but the biggest changes were inside. The interior was completely redesigned. I don't have any pictures of the interior, but here are illustrations from the current of the redesigned entryway. Remember how the current reporter back in 1857 had gotten so worked up about the stairs? Visitors back then had to climb a lot of stairs to get up to the lobby, but times were changing and more convenience was now demanded. On the Asylum Street side, the entrance stairway was removed, as well as the stores on either side of the doors so that there would be space for a new ground floor lobby. The lobby extended all the way back to what had been an open courtyard, but that was now enclosed under a 40-foot-high gilded dome. The newly rejuvenated hotel continued to enjoy its days of splendor until much of the building was converted to commercial use in 1920. There are many tales that can be told of the hotel's famous visitors over the years, like P.T. Barnum. It was popular with state politicians, including many Connecticut governors who stayed during political conventions and sessions of the legislature. The hotel also had many notable employees, like John J. Dahill, who retired in 1914 after 41 years at the hotel, having risen from bellhop to hotel manager. A later addition was a ratskeller in the basement, put in 1933. In this postcard view, you can see the majestic theater, which replaced the old Allyn Hall or Auditorium building. It was built in 1915 and later became E.M. Lowe's. It was demolished in 1970, a decade after the Allyn House itself was torn down, in anticipation of coming redevelopment. For over a decade after 1960, the site of the old Allyn House was a parking lot until work began on the Hartford Civic Center. So people who live in the Hartford 21 building today can know that Abraham Lincoln and many other famous people once slept where their building now stands. You can read more about this building and other lost Hartford buildings in my book Vanished Downtown Hartford, which is available from the History Press. It's also available from online retailers like Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. You can also visit my website, Historic Buildings of Connecticut, historicbuildingsct.com. Thank you.